Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Natasha Smikles is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearance on episode 777 of Boundless Body Radio. Natasha Smikles is a highly skilled registered psychiatric nurse who has been highly involved in the mental health field. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Natasha worked as a mental health clinician across a variety of care settings. She co-founded DBT Winnipeg and the Mental Health Collective, initiatives dedicated to providing mental health treatment and fostering collaboration among professionals. Natasha holds a Master of Science in Psychology and Neuroscience of Mental Health from King's College London and a Bachelor of Science in Psychiatric Nursing from Brandon University. In recent years, Natasha has specialized in metabolic therapies for mental health. After successfully using ketogenic metabolic therapy to manage her own ADHD, she integrated these innovative strategies to enhance client outcomes. As a passionate advocate in the field, Natasha is excited to contribute her knowledge and expertise by joining the Metabolic Collective. Metabolic Collective is a nonprofit organization that is building a grassroots, healing-centered community infrastructure that empowers people to adopt metabolic therapies, sustain recovery, and turn personal transformation into collective impact, mobilizing a passionate network of regional advocates to advocate metabolic approaches in psychiatry and neurology. Natasha Smikles, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much, Casey. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and I'm really, really glad that you're having me back.
It's such an honor to host you. I think I need a nap after that introduction. So many big words in there and awesome things that you've done. I was able to get through it okay. I do want to say I've got some good news for you today. Last time you came on, you said you're not a hockey fan, which made me question your Canadian citizenship, by the way. Like, I don't think any Canadian citizen can say that about hockey, but the very good news, we're not going to talk hockey today, and we're not going to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, your beloved hometown team, who are on an unprecedented skid from being the very best team in the league last year to being, unfortunately, at the time of this recording, the worst. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's what I hear. The word on the street is we're not doing so great, but
It's
I
not
wouldn't know
great.
because I don't watch.
It's not great. And yeah, you don't need to watch. I do have to say, so I went to a game last night. My Utah Mammoth, my beloved team, played the Ottawa Senators, which means we got to get treated to the Canadian national anthem and the United States national anthem. And I don't care how much hate mail I'm going to get from this for all of my American friends about my non-patriotism. I will say objectively, the Canadian national anthem is one of the most beautiful national anthems, and I would argue even better than the American national anthem by far, I would argue. So you got that going for you.
Interesting. I'm really curious about that though. I would like to know what stood out for you with
It's
it.
just it's so simple. It's easy to sing. It's beautiful. The words are lovely, whether it's sung in French or in American. I absolutely love it. It's cool in different arenas, also in hockey, in Canada when they play it. Like Edmonton is a really good example. I'm not sure what they do in Winnipeg, but in Edmonton, the guy will start singing it and then he'll stop after the first line, and the entire crowd takes over and
Oh,
everybody sings, and it's just like goosebumps every time I hear it. I don't know why. I just think it's absolutely beautiful.
yeah, very cool.
Uh, well, awesome. I don't always do this before I prepare for inviting somebody back to the podcast. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But for your case, I decided to go back and listen to our original episode. And I told you off air, and I'm going to tell you now, it really stood out to me how amazingly knowledgeable you are in the world of metabolic health and ketogenic therapies for mental health. And talking with you last year, it sounded like you were a grizzled veteran that had been with it for so long. I kind of forgot that you had only found, or not necessarily
Mm.
found, but it started a ketogenic diet even for yourself within that year. It had not been very long since you had been into this. And we had talked in that episode about, like, wow, we should follow up in a few months to see how things are going if you're going to stick with it, because it was really new that you had found some of this stuff. And even though you were an absolute expert in the field at the time that I interviewed you, it just really struck me that it wasn't something you had been doing forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at that time I was probably maybe doing the ketogenic diet. I want to say maybe for about 8 or 9 months. So it was under a year
That's
because
right.
I started it. Yeah, had started in March of 2024, I think. So I'm coming up to 2 years. And I do want to clarify too. So when I started a ketogenic diet, it was specifically for ADHD symptoms. And it really helped subside the vast majority of those symptoms. Like, so for the first year, I was very, very strict with the diet, like kind of testing ketone measures regularly, kind of getting a feel for like what I ate and how that impacted my body. So seeing how the ketone levels would either rise or fall, starting to correlate that if I felt like this pent up energy or if I was feeling really anxious. I think that's the symptom that it helped me with the most, the ketogenic diet. Um, but it was interesting because the more I started to kind of test and collect data on what my ketone levels were at, I would just start to automatically know within my body if I was feeling really scattered or if I was feeling anxious or I had this pent up energy where I just couldn't stop moving around, that my levels were low. And it's so funny because I actually was able to almost pinpoint it where if my levels for me are below zero point 0.8, then I'm getting a rush of symptoms coming back. So, yeah. So the interesting thing here, Casey, is for that first year, I maybe veered off the diet, I want to say like a handful of times, like maybe 5 times, and then was just able to bounce right back the next day because I felt so terrible with all of those symptoms coming back. But I also want to say, so because I've been doing this for over a year, so again, that was March 2024. So I guess we're coming up to almost 2 years. In the last couple of months, I have been kind of going on and off on occasion. So I'm trying to get, I guess, I'm thinking of it as being metabolically flexible. So there are times where I will have carbs maybe once a week, and then I'll kind of jump right back in. And I'm kind of watching my ketone levels to kind of see what they do. And I can, fortunately, I've been doing this long enough that my body just responds and I can hit a ketosis again really quite quickly. And
Wow.
it's funny because now if I have some carbs or if I go off of keto a little bit and my ketones drop, the symptoms aren't coming back in the same way. So I don't know what to make of that. That's just been my personal experience. Like it's a lot more tolerable if I was to veer off and come back on. So I don't want to give the messaging that you need to be doing a strict adherent ketogenic diet for the rest of your life, because I think that's going to be completely up to the individual. So for me, myself, because I'm so familiar with my body and what I'm consuming, that now I'm kind of in a stage where I feel like I have a really, really solid foundation and baseline that I can kind of play around, with trying different foods once in a while to just see what it does.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a great point. And we don't want to go in either direction. We don't want to say that somebody has to be strict ketogenic for the rest of their life. We also don't want to say like, hey, if you're not strict ketogenic, that these symptoms might come back, because both of those can be true. But I will say exactly what you said, like anecdotally, what I hear talking to people, being in the space, interviewing people for so long, your story is not unique, where you go a period of time, you have to be strict. You notice that symptoms come back when, measured ketones, which is such a cool objective thing to be able to measure when you're on this diet. It tells you exactly where you are, which is amazing. But there has to be something regenerative, healing, whatever about ketones themselves, that for some people they can start to loosen up a little bit and they don't have to be strict for the rest of their lives. There's got to be something healing with the ketones themselves that enables that.
Yeah, I fully agree. And the other interesting thing too that I found was when I started the ketogenic diet, in the mornings, my glucose levels were probably a little bit higher than they should have been. And now, even though I'm kind of switching in and out, they're stabilizing more. So they are
Wow.
lower on average than they were when I started. So there had to have been something going on where maybe I had more of an intolerance or that insulin resistance that I wasn't even fully aware of yet
Yeah,
when I
that's
started.
fascinating.
So
Fascinating.
it's
Yeah, for
very
all of
interesting.
us who say, carbohydrates are terrible and you shouldn't have them ever and they're going to affect your insulin. And then you hear stories like that. And it's like, wow, we still have a lot to learn about all of that stuff. So I think that's really interesting. Can you speak to the benefit that you have noticed? Again, just anecdotally, I'm just very curious.
Mhm.
As you have added in carbohydrates, what benefits have you noticed? Is it that your blood sugar has ended up being a little bit more normal? Is it simply the fact that like it's nice to be a little bit more liberal with your diet? Are you noticing sugar cravings, coming back, or food addiction or sugar addiction issues? Like what kinds of benefits have you noticed from bringing back carbohydrates in the diet to like you said, like maybe a day a week or whatever extent you have been doing it? Does it, I mean, have you noticed specific benefits, or is it just nice to not be so strict?
think it's more so, you know what, that's a really good question because I actually hadn't thought about that. I was going to say, I think it's more so the option to eat more like different kinds of foods. But when I really think of like when I go off it, it's just like I might go off it because I want to have some sushi. But there's a way that you could make sushi with like riced cauliflower and still have it, you know, somewhat keto versus using the rice. So I think it's maybe more so that, like, if I'm gonna have carbs, I'm not eating a ton of carbs. It's like I'm having something like that. Or maybe I'm going to a nice restaurant, you know, and I'm not as fussy about what those macros look like. Like maybe I'm eating a little bit of the potato or the rice that's on the plate, but I'm still usually sticking to, you know, how am I getting proteins in, the fats? The fats are so important, you know, maybe some little bit of veg, which is, you know, breaking down into carbs there. But yeah, so I don't want to make it sound like either like that I'm intentionally doing a carb load or that I'm intentionally eating carbs for a specific purpose, because it's not so much that. I think it's more so, you know, that I'm just kind of curious and want to experiment with like how my body can fluctuate in and out of the different metabolic states.
Cool.
So
Well
I
said.
think, yeah, that's kind of my thought there. Yeah.
Well said. It doesn't sound like you're eating a pizza and then a cake and then chasing it down with a 2 liter bottle of Coke, for
Oh, yeah.
example.
No, no, no. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It is interesting. It follows a trend and a pattern that I notice with many people, like I mentioned before, where yes, there's a time you need to be more strict with your diet. You need to narrow the things down, keep things really simple. And then for some people, yeah, you can open things back up and play around, being mindful. I think most people still end up in a space where they're, pretty darn low carbohydrate, even if they're eating more. Might be, still, very much ketogenic for most of the time. So that metabolic flexibility is pretty cool. And I think that's a nice message to share with a lot of people out there who don't think they want to be on a strict diet for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing I want to mention here too is if you have been on a ketogenic diet long term and you just want to start to slowly play around with maybe incorporating some carbs, definitely don't do what you said. Don't eat the pizza with the pop, chase it down with cake or whatever order that was, right? Like, do not do that. That's probably going to lead to like a big headache and stomach ache, you know, but it could be just that you slowly just start to incorporate little amounts here and there and just see what your body does and how it responds, you know. And the other thing here too that I want to mention, I know when people first start a ketogenic diet they can go through those keto flu symptoms within the first couple of weeks. That, so for me, that does not happen just flexing in and out now. So I wouldn't want somebody to be fearful of being like, if I was to try something different after being on a ketogenic diet long term, that I'm going to struggle with a keto flu if I want to go back,
Yeah, good point.
because that might not necessarily happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
And
Yeah,
again,
again, it just
I was strict keto for a year
yeah.
before I started kind of playing around and figuring out what works for me.
Again, anecdotally, that lines up really, really well with things that I've noticed in the past where, yeah, you might suffer the first time you get into ketosis. When you jump out of it by having that cheat, like it does impact you a little bit more than maybe it would in the past. And that's more motivating to kind of stay within the realm. But if you go off with, a piece of fruit or some sushi or a potato here and there, like it's not like you have to like readapt to that way of eating. It's just, I think, being exposed to a very high carbohydrate diet, lots of ultra processed foods for a very, very long time. When you switch out of that, you're going to suffer a little bit for a few days. But once you make that jump, as long as you don't go all the way back, you should be just fine to kind of bounce in and out.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's just such an important point here too, because we also want to normalize that even if someone's really trying to be adherent with the diet, there might be the odd slip up, right?
Exactly.
There might be the odd slip up. That's okay. You can just go back on track the next day.
Just get back on. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, we have some exciting stuff to chat about today. I am fortunate that I get to chat with our mutual friend, Robin Dobbins, every single week in our training sessions and get updates from her about Metabolic Collective, to feel like I've got kind of a front row seat to what you guys are up to. The progress that you guys have made, even just in the last few weeks and months, is absolutely incredible. I love the project and love what you're getting into. So we'll definitely be talking about that today. But remind us a little bit about your own personal story. I find it interesting that you were kind of more, if I have the timing right, you were in the mental health space for a while before you even really realized that
Yes.
you had mental health issues yourself. Can you tell us about that timeline and what that was like?
Yeah. Okay. My timeline might be a bit foggy here, but I'll try my best. It feels like a completely different life at this point. So it's actually a little bit hard to imagine what things were like for me before because I have so much distance where my mind and, just my overall experience is so different now compared to how it was prior to the ketogenic diet, to be honest. So so my background in training was as a psychiatric nurse. So I had been working in that field of mental health for, I want to say probably about 18 years. So when I started, I worked at kind of as a healthcare aide while I was in university, taking the course, worked in hospital, worked in crisis services, community mental health, doing psychiatric assessments out of emergency departments. And the last 10 years was primarily doing individual psychotherapy, more specifically dialectical behavior therapy. So that was kind of a lot of my history and background. So I want to say it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago that I was diagnosed with ADHD. I'm not going to go into all the details for that because people can go to that other episode if they're curious to know more about how that transpired and kind of my history there. But I was on stimulant medication. I was on that probably, I want to say, for about a year and a half. And then there were downfalls for me with the medication over time. So one of the things I really noticed that even though the medications helped, they helped with things like I had this pent up energy. It really helped me feel calmer so I could be more controlled and focused. It helped me be able to switch between tasks, which is something I really struggled with before. Like, as an example, if I was working, let's say, on a paper and then I'm interrupted, then I would have to go do the thing, that interrupted me. And then if I was to come back to the paper, it's almost like I had to do some kind of mental gymnastics to refocus on having to write the paper. So sometimes I could waste, like, honestly, Casey, I could waste hours sitting trying to get back to that paper because it's like for some weird reason, it just feels like this barrier that you just can't do it. Like, it's bizarre. It's such a strange sensation. It's really hard to put that in words. But those were some of the things that I was struggling with that really dissipated when I started the ketogenic therapies. And I started the ketogenic therapies because I came across Chris Palmer on a podcast, which I think would have been January, February of 2024. And I was already looking for other solutions at that point because even though I was on the Concerta and it was helpful for a lot of those symptoms that I was struggling with, there were downsides because when the medication wore off in the evenings, I felt like I was just getting flooded, with this anxiousness, pent up energy, like couldn't focus in the evenings, which is probably when I had to focus the most because the evenings was when I did not have structure or routine. But during my day job, I did. So I could function really well during the day, regardless, because I had structure. I just knew the next thing I had to do. But the evenings was so open ended that it was really hard to prioritize, or manage anything in my spare time or my personal life. So having all those symptoms kind of come back and hit you like a wave when you don't want them was really problematic. And there were other things too, like, it really kind of made me lose my appetite. So I remember there was, one time my husband and I went to a nice restaurant and halfway through the meal, I was just like, I just don't even want this. Everything just tasted like cardboard. So it just wasn't, so it was kind of taking away from enjoyable experiences. And then I noticed too that it was really taking away from a lot of the creativity that I had. So over time, I did kind of decide to discontinue the medication and I was looking for other solutions. And then when I heard Chris Palmer on that podcast, that's where I was like, I need to give this a go. So that's how that journey kind of started. So I was in the mental health space before. And then that has slowly kind of shifted in terms of my career. That has actually shifted over the past year as well. So as I mentioned, I was primarily working as a psychiatric nurse. I did have a few clients who had asked me about ketogenic therapies. I gave them the resources. I had a couple of people who really, really benefited from it. I had a lot of friends, a lot of family members. I've even had colleagues who have gone on the ketogenic diet, noticed, remarkable benefits. Some of them still are on a ketogenic diet after a year. So, I think that's pretty promising in itself of how helpful these dietary patterns can be for a lot of people. But what I was kind of getting at is, when I was starting to see the people around me and clients and meeting more people just through this whole community of individuals who have had lived experience with metabolic, ketogenic therapies, it just kind of really came to me that I have to do more to scale this. And that's where this opportunity came up to work with Metabolic Collective. So technically right now I've completely shifted out of doing psychotherapy practice because I'm in a position now where my focus went to how do we start to scale this to make a bigger impact? Because some of the results I'm seeing from people are so profound that, the proof is in the pudding here, right? Like, it's like, I always talk about it as like, where's Waldo? Like, Waldo, the cartoon, the guy in the striped shirt and the little like beanie, and you got to find him. To me, the ketogenic metabolic therapies for mental health was that. It was like, once you see Waldo, you can't unsee him, right? So once you see the impact of what these types of therapies can do for people, right? Like, you can't unsee it. There's something important here. And how do we scale that? So I actually left my private practice back in October to really try to work towards how do we, get the word out there more so that more people will have the opportunities to come across ketogenic metabolic therapies, try them, engage in a supportive community, and give them more options and opportunities. Because what's happening right now is a lot of people who are seeking treatment for mental health are only told there's one or two options. It's medication, psychotherapy, and that's fine. We're not saying don't do those things, but what we're saying is there's another option that you could try that could also be a great adjunct to those other items, right? So that's kind of where I'm at right now in terms of career.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier, if somebody wants to hear your full story, go back and listen to the first episode. Anybody should just go back and listen to that first episode, because the contrast of what you just said and what you said only like a year ago of like, okay, I just found ketogenic therapies. You're right as far as the timeline. You were coming up on your first year anniversary. It hadn't even been a year yet, and you were acknowledging that like this is big, it's really cool, this is a great adjunct to some of these other treatments. And again, you acknowledge that this was a big thing and could help a lot of people. What you just said is like, no, this is like earth shattering. This is massive.
Yes.
And I'm willing to completely switch my career. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge, Casey. And I mean, it's a cause I fully believe in. And like I said, I've worked my entire career, right? Like probably like 18 years or so in mental health. And I've never seen something like this before. Something that could just be an intervention that could help so many people if they can just learn about it, learn about like, metabolism, how our brain is utilizing energy, how important being able to shift to a different metabolic state can help, right? Like these are things a lot of people just don't know. And when I think about my own journey here, Casey, if I didn't hear Chris Palmer on that podcast that day, how much longer could I have been stuck struggling before coming across this, right? This is the power of communication and getting the word out there. Like, I view this as a ripple effect. So the more we can talk about this, let people know it's an option, and then they can choose. Just give people the choice. If they don't want to, that's completely fine. I'm not saying everybody and their dog should go on a ketogenic diet here. Actually, my dog is on a ketogenic diet for his arthritis, and he's doing great. He's like, yeah, quick side tangent. My dog is going to be turning 11 next month, and he is a Great Dane, and he is doing really quite well because those breeds do not live that long. So he's already kind of surpassed his age limit there. So he's doing all right.
That's amazing
for an old guy. But yes, he's been on a ketogenic diet for about a year and a half for his arthritis.
Wow. And you told us last time about the other dog that lasted way longer than he should have after getting a terminal diagnosis, and that's the original way that you found a ketogenic diet to begin with. You said how much longer, you marvel how much longer you would have been in the wilderness, without ketogenic therapies. I remember how much time it took me to find Waldo in the Where's Waldo book. So it probably would have taken about that long for you to be in the wilderness. Not that short.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk obviously about like what you've noticed about ketogenic diets and mental health. Before we do, going back to your personal story, how did you find the podcast? What made you think I want to even listen to this podcast? Or like what were your thoughts hearing Chris Palmer for the first time? Like it's one thing to hear about it. Maybe you saw a title, whatever drew you to it, but
Mhm.
then to listen to somebody saying like I'm seeing that food is changing a mental state. What was that thing like for you?
Yeah, so it was interesting, Casey. So I mean, I didn't seek out that podcast. That was a podcast that I listened to routinely. So it was, I think it was Diary of a CEO. So he was just the guest speaker on that podcast. And the thing that, the light bulb, I guess we can say, that went off was, oh my gosh, this is what I was looking for. Because prior to hearing that podcast, Casey, I did wonder and I had considered, would a ketogenic diet help me? Because I did a quick trial of it back in like 2017 because I had a client at that time who said it was helpful for her. So I was like, I'm just going to try it for 6 weeks. And I remember at that time, my mind was so clear and I felt so level and good. And that was prior to being diagnosed with ADHD. So after I was diagnosed, I had always wondered if a ketogenic diet would help just because of how I felt at that time. Because that would have been, gosh, that would have been like probably like, let's say 4 or 5 years prior to me being diagnosed. Now, so I had speculated, could a ketogenic diet be helpful? At that time, I looked in the literature and there really wasn't anything published on it because the Shabani Sethi study wasn't out yet. So I think I had two things that happened. One was like, oh my gosh, here it is. I already like suspected this could be a possibility. And then the other part was almost like, why didn't I just trust myself and my intuition to try it? Like, why did I actually need to hear it from a professional, or why did I actually need to see a research study? But I think that just speaks to a bigger theme here, too, that people want to see the research. People want to be hearing, lived experiences, stories about other people who have utilized this, hearing it from professionals, right? Like Chris Palmer. So, again, the more we can open up these conversations, there's now so much more research out there now than there was, back in early 2024. It's, we're creating a more convincing argument to give it a try.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Think about where we are today in 2026 and where we were in 2017, like you said. I talk about this all the time. It's like borderline annoying. Nicole Laurent told me to go onto Google Scholar and type in ketogenic, so it will send you an automatic email every time new studies are published. And it's almost like spam email at this point that I get like 4 or 5 emails with multiple studies every single week. And it's like, I don't have time to go through all these studies. It's amazing. It's such a different
Yeah.
scene than what you're describing back then. Like the studies are piling up. You're right.
Yes. Yes. And this is kind of, I think, what I was alluding to, right? Like that we are on, we are catching the big wave. That big wave is coming, right? And it's going to potentially be earth shattering. I honestly do believe that that could be a high possibility here.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you and I are recording this the day after the USDA just kind of flipped the food pyramid upside down. Like the South Park episode that talked all about that was like kind of right. And now they're acknowledging it. And like, this whatever administration said they were going to try to do some stuff. And I wasn't holding my breath, certainly, like nice ideas, but to actually see it, I was in absolute disbelief. I thought somebody had just made something up and published a picture on Twitter. And it turns out there is some momentum going in that direction.
Yeah. And it's so funny too. Well, because I'm Canadian, right? So I don't think our food pyramid has changed yet, and or maybe even anytime soon. But when I actually saw that post, I thought it was just like some generic AI thing. And then I was scrolling on my Instagram and I'm like, oh, like there's been like already like 5 people that posted this as I'm just scrolling. And then I'm like, no, wait, this is a real. Like I didn't even, I think the first few ones I thought it was maybe like a meme or a joke. And then when I actually like stopped to look at it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is huge. But again, right, it is showing us that we are looking in the right direction when it comes to healthcare. Finally, like,
You and I had the exact same reaction. That's so funny. Like, I really did think it was something that made up a meme or whatever. Like, oh, is this is not real? No way. And it is very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, before we talk about Metabolic Collective, when you're talking about mental health, when I'm talking about mental health and ketogenic diets, I feel a little crazy. I feel a little weird when it seems like ketogenic metabolic therapies can help with so many seemingly different mental health issues. Like when we're talking about mental health, like what are the lines between mental health for anxiety or depression or Alzheimer's or run-of-the-mill brain fog or anorexia? Like is there are there lines blurred between those things? Are there things that ketogenic diets help really well for these diagnoses, but not these other ones, or just the severe things and not the mild things? Like, what have you learned in your experience about the benefits of a metabolic ketogenic therapy for, some mental health, all mental health, anything where are the lines there?
Yeah. I feel like the short answer there, Casey, is I don't think there's any like clear cut, this is only going to solve this problem, And even when it comes to mental health, and I mean, I think Chris Palmer alludes to this in his brain energy book, mental health is so intertwined, right? When we're just looking at clusters of symptoms, it is very, very rare that you're just going to see someone who only struggles with depression, as an example, right? If that person's struggling with depression, they're probably struggling with depression. They could be struggling with substance use. They could be struggling with anxiety. They could also be struggling with ADHD. They could also have, an underlying personality disorder. It's very, very rare that you're only going to see one clear cut diagnosis because everything is so intertwined and so enmeshed. And unfortunately, in the mental health field, psychiatry, we're basing diagnoses off of subjective symptoms, right? Like we're basing it off of what we're being told by the client direct. We're not at a position right now where we can do any kind of fancy scans to actually see like, oh, this is what's going on. I mean, that's different when it comes to neurology, right? Like dementia, Alzheimer's, that's different. Like, yes, we have the capacity to see those on scans or through different tests and measures. But when it comes just to general mental health, it's just whatever's being relayed by the person.
It's interesting. It seems like every week somebody in my life is telling me, oh, my mom just got diagnosed with this, or my kid is having struggles with, schoolwork and all this stuff. And I just, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm sure there's one of those emails generated from, Google Scholar that has a specific study with this, but I'm willing to bet that a ketogenic diet is probably going to be helpful for all these different things that I've never even heard of. I just, to that point, and what you're describing, it's like, I'm pretty sure this is going to help with so many things out there.
Yeah. And well, and I guess my stance on that too, Casey, or my thoughts on that is what's the harm? What's the harm of just trying the diet? Like, so I want to be clear that there are certain, medical conditions that could actually, get worse if you're on a ketogenic diet, or there's certain medications that you might need to change if you're going to implement a ketogenic diet, because that metabolism shift can make a lot of changes to medications, or certain diabetes medications could actually cause a ketoacidosis. So I want to be clear on that if somebody is looking at trying a ketogenic therapy for a medical reason, they should be trying to consult with a practitioner so they understand all of the risks. But for the vast majority of us, the risk is incredibly low, right? You might get a few weeks of a keto flu, and then you're going to bounce into a ketosis, right? And I don't want to make it sound that easy either, because it is really difficult to completely try to change a different way of eating if that's what you're used to, right? But for a lot of people, they want a different option. And I've already met a lot of people, probably hundreds at this point over the past year alone, who have taken that step to improve their lives, their health, their mental health with a ketogenic diet. And they've benefited.
Yeah, that's such a great point. This always stands out to me. I've hosted Travis Christofferson a few times on the podcast, and he's written several books about ketosis, the history of this kind of thing. And just one of the things he said really stood out to me, where it's like there's almost nothing in the medical field that doesn't have trade-offs. Like everything has trade-offs. You take a medication, it helps with this, and then there's the list of all these other things that it's probably going to cause. There are side effects, there are trade-offs, the surgery, replace the knee, awesome. That's good for certain things, but there's a recovery process. You might not ever get your range of motion back. Like there's always trade-offs. And with ketosis, there never seems to be that big of a trade-off. And yes, you're right. Like there are some people where you have to be very careful. And that is some people some of the time, and the risk is usually very, very low. And the potential upside is like there's almost no trade-off. It's like if this
Yes.
diet could be good for your mental health, but it caused a heart attack or your diabetes was going to get worse, like all of that improves. Your weight will get better. You will be able to maintain your muscle mass. You can start intermittent fasting and get those benefits. Like the list of potential benefits is so great that are just like, oh, this is also just a side note besides to say like I can control my ADHD and get through the day and get projects done. Like it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. So I think for the vast majority of people like you or myself, right, we wouldn't be in a high risk category for something going haywire if we switched into a ketogenic state
Right.
or ketosis. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, just to say, like, yes, there is the keto flu, but now, we're so far into this that we know how to mitigate that. Like, we can tell you things
Yes.
to make it a little easier. You can transition, over a longer period of time or have some like, there's things you can do to make those things
Yeah.
so much better. We're so much further along on that state. So I love this topic and getting fired up with you about it. Take us into the journey of this past year in a little bit more detail of like you're running your practice, you're helping people, you're learning more and more about metabolic therapies, and then comes this point which I'm not even that familiar with of like metabolic collective is maybe like knocking on your door. There's an opportunity there. Like what was that kind of journey like for you?
Yeah. So I want to say over the past year, just because again, I feel like, this whole idea of ketogenic and metabolic therapies, right? Once you understand metabolism, how you can shift metabolism, how your body kind of can convert and utilize energy in a different way, how it can improve your overall brain health. Again, it's where's Waldo. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? So the more I started to see people improving after they choose to do this dietary intervention, it really made me like it was nice because it was validating being like, okay, I'm seeing several people who have had similar experiences to what I had when I got better from ketogenic therapies. Um, and then it kind of made me realize too, like, I need to figure out like how to connect with people more. So I was actively actually connecting with several people. So people who have, podcasts like yourself, people who are doing meetup groups. Like I try to do everything I can to figure out what else is out there, who's running what kind of programs. And then with Metabolic Collective, so I'll give a quick summary about that. So Metabolic Collective is a non-for-profit organization. And over the past year, they were starting to put in a lot of the foundation. They put together a board of directors to start up a grassroots movement for individuals who were interested in the field of metabolic psychiatry and neurology. So we'll dive a little bit more into that. But I had started off volunteering with them is kind of how this all transpired. So I actually got connected with I don't know if oh yeah, you do know Janet Ebos.
She's awesome. I love Janice.
She's
Janet.
great. Yeah. So Janet and I we connected through Dr. Ead's clinician group. She had a question that she had posted on there because if you do Dr. Ead's clinician training for ketogenic therapies, you'll be put in a Google group. So one day Janet asked a question. I answered it. She's also Canadian, so we started kind of talking back and forth. And then I found out she was with Metabolic Collective. She's on the board of directors there. And just through corresponding with her over time, they gave me an opportunity to volunteer. So at that time, I was kind of the head of a project, which was, we call it the Advocate Resource Hub. And then after Metabolic Collective got funding, they were like, okay, we need to actually have some hired staff to, take, the vision to the next level. So that's where I got involved and I was provided with an offer. And I now work as the director of impact and operations for
That's
Metabolic
amazing.
Collective. Yeah. And then we have Emily Harari, who's also a staff, and then Robin Dobbins, as you know. So it's the three of us who are the staff right now. We have a board of directors. We also have an awesome list of clinical advisors. So if you're ever on the site, definitely check out, you know, who's helping us out here, because clinical advisors, we have Chris Palmer is a clinical advisor, Nicole Laurent, who you mentioned, Martin Picard. So we got a really cool group of people that we're going to start collaborating with here. And we also have just a big community. We started like a core advocate group. So we have individuals who we're starting to get to do kind of like little call to actions in the community. And as we're starting to roll out different resources, we're getting feedback from what the community actually wants. And then it's a private Facebook group. So we are also on X. So those are our two social medias, is the Facebook and the X group. The X group is more about kind of promoting the things that the organization is going to start doing. And the private Facebook group is for actual community collaboration. So the Facebook group just started up really a couple of months ago. And I think we have about 150 people in there right now. So that's kind of the place that you can go if you want to know what kind of events are coming up. If you have a question, like if you're on this journey, if you have a question about ketogenic or any kind of metabolic therapy, you can post about it. But the whole idea is to start building our own grassroots community. But the bigger thing here is we talk about this idea of rebuild as being part of metabolic therapies. And this is kind of the core to what Metabolic Collective is trying to achieve, is how do we get people to start rebuilding as they're in recovery? So rebuild comes from Metabolic Mind's Think Smart framework. So for people who aren't familiar with that, you could look at it's kind of like another organization, Metabolic Mind. They're also nonprofit. Maybe I'll give a little rundown here. So Metabolic Mind does an excellent job with teaching people about the research that's coming up. They have different CME courses. They're kind of just a big knowledge hub of education. So I feel like Metabolic Mind is educating the public, and they develop this Think Smart guideline. So it's an individualized guideline where you can kind of figure out like how to implement ketogenic therapies and then how to implement other metabolic therapies. So the SMART would be like for sleep, for movement, but the R in SMART is about rebuild. And that's what Metabolic Collective is trying to do, is work from this rebuild framework. Because rebuild is about, when I think of rebuild, I think someone's on their journey, right? They've started incorporating metabolic therapies. A common theme that I'm hearing from a lot of people are that they're trying these strategies. It's working for them. They want to connect with other people. So how are they starting to build purpose and meaning in their lives? Because I think that there's kind of a bit of an untold story here that I'm starting to see emerge, which is we have so many individuals. I've had my own experience. I've met so many people who never thought that their lives could get better. So what does that mean, right? And I'm fortunate that I didn't have to struggle with very severe symptoms like severe mood dysregulation, right? Hallucination, psychosis. That's never been my experience. I'm fortunate and grateful for that, because I can't even imagine how horrible that is for an individual to experience. But for some of these people, they are told, this is your life now. You may never get better. And I've met so many people now who have tried, ketogenic metabolic therapies as an adjunct to what they were already doing. So even just taking it with the prescribed medications, getting substantially better. And then what does that do to somebody's identity? Right? When you are told and you become a patient and this is your identity, right? I am X mental illness. I have to learn how to live with this and radically accept that this is my life. And this intervention can radically change it. What does that mean? And how do I build purpose and meaning in my life now that I'm a completely different person and my brain is functioning differently? That to me is rebuild. How are we helping those individuals find purpose and meaning in their life? And that is essentially what we're trying to do with Metabolic Collective.
That's so cool. Okay, I just have to say that's amazing. My favorite part of all of that was in the first part of your response, you had a mission of the Metabolic Collective, and you were able to state that mission in about 2 or 3 sentences. That is a true elevator pitch of what Metabolic Collective is trying to do. Working with Robin week after week with personal training and doing workouts with her, I remember it wasn't that long ago, 2 or 3 months ago, where she's getting involved, and an elevator pitch was like maybe 5 or 6 minutes long, like trying to even think of and define, like, what are we doing? What's our purpose? It's this, but it's also this. We're not really sure. It's so cool to see the evolution, seemingly, at least with her involvement, of like, we're understanding what we're doing, and we have a clear, kind of mission. We've got a vision. All that stuff that you mentioned, I think, is wonderful. You mentioned the Bazooki Group. You mentioned Metabolic Mind. Does Metabolic Collective fit inside the umbrella of Metabolic Mind, or is it a separate entity that works with Metabolic Mind?
You know what? That's a great question. And I'm glad that you brought that up. So think of it this way. So we have Bazooki Group, right? They're helping with funding a lot of the research. We have Metabolic Mind, where I kind of view that organization as, educating the public clinicians. Then there's also Metabolic Coalition. And I don't know a lot about it, but my understanding is I think they are helping with changing policies. And then we are kind of going like bottom up, like all those approaches are top down. We're coming in bottom up, where we're working with the direct public, right? So we are on the ground floor, and we are kind of like, we're in collaboration with Metabolic Mind. So there kind of is like a tight bridge there. Like, we are a completely separate organization. And I can let you know too, the bridge point is Hannah Warren. Hannah Warren works with Metabolic Mind, Bazooki family. But Metabolic Collective was essentially, it was developed by Hannah, because she saw this need, right, for individuals who, ultimately, like, there's people who have profound changes with their own lives. And the other thing that happens is when an individual experiences that, they get really excited and they want to talk about it. So how do we harness, all of that energy where people are trying this, their lives are changing, they're getting excited. And how do we start developing resources and call to actions and teaching them how to go out in their communities now and become advocates? And that's a big part here too, because even that, right? Like, being able to be like, hey, we will help you, like, as an example, launch a group. That's one of the things that we're working on right now. If you have an idea or you want to start a group that aligns with metabolic therapies, we will help you, and we will help you develop the resources you need so that you can start some kind of a group in your area. Right? If you want to give a presentation, we just uploaded a slide deck on our website where have like a video tutorial where I'm kind of teaching like how you would deliver this presentation. Same kind of idea. If you want to deliver a presentation to any kind of community, maybe it is like another mental health organization, maybe you're a clinician, maybe it's just you want to give a pitch to your family, you can download the slide deck. It's got all the speaker notes in it, and it even has videos that talk about the science. So Brett Shear's in a video and Hannah Warren's in a video, and those are Metabolic Mind videos that link to our resources. So that's what we're trying to do is, there's all this excitement, there's all this momentum. Everything's about energy, right? So even when we're talking about metabolism and metabolism shifts, it's energy. We have all these energized people who want to be part of a movement. So how do we actually get clear about like, what can they do? And that's kind of like where we're at right now, is we're trying to figure out like giving them the infrastructure so that they can then go out in their communities and help promote this or help advocate for it.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Hannah is incredible. She's such a wonderful advocate. It was so funny. My favorite memory of Hannah was going to the 2024 Symposium for Metabolic Health. She's on stage. She's getting interviewed by Dr. Brett Shear, and she's talking to a nutrition-based conference and talking about her vegetarian diet. And it's the only nutrition conference you could ever go to where somebody's almost like shy about talking about eating vegetables or whatever. Like, it was so funny that she almost felt like she had to defend herself. She's wonderful. Her work is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And I just have to say, what you just described as what Metabolic Collective is going to do fills a huge void and a huge need out there, because what I have observed over time being in this community is people like yourself, people like me, people like Robin. You find this stuff, you find Waldo in the sea of all these other people and objects, and it's amazing, and it transforms your life, and you just don't want to shut up about it. Nicole Ront says it all the time. Like, I can't shut up about this. How do I do this? Well, I've got my practice, so I can tell individual clients. I've got my clients that I train. I can mention that to them. Robin can start a podcast. I think about all of the winners of the 2024 Fresh Start Award, where the Bazooki Group, Metabolic Mind, gave $10,000 grants to 10 different
Yeah.
people. Amazing. This is awesome. And now here's all this money you can go do something with. And what I'm observing is there's so many different like silos of all these people out there doing their absolute best to make some change in whatever way. But then again, like if I want to send somebody somewhere, do I send them to Robin who's doing this podcast? Do I send them to Donica who's doing this other thing? Do I send them to this person who's doing this group? Do I send them over here with this other? Like there's so many different things out there. This
Mm-hmm.
is where I think the greatest need can be fulfilled of Metabolic Collective, and what makes it so unique is we can help everybody not necessarily standardize things, but give you the resources to do in your community. Like you said, you're energized, you're passionate. Here's what you can do. We're going to help you with this. I think is the most amazing void that you can fill.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the longer, actually, there's a couple of longer term projects I want to talk about here too. One of them is we eventually want to have a database on our website that over time we can start finding out who's doing what in this field. We can throw them into a database so someone could come on the website and be like, oh, I'm interested in a hiking group. Who's doing hiking groups? I'm interested in a breathwork group or a yoga group, or I'm interested in a keto carnivore group, or how do I do keto, vegetarian? Like the hope is that the more groups we start to help foster and, um, launch, because we don't also, here's the other thing I want to point out. We are not telling that people, how to run their group. That's part of their rebuild, right? So it's like we will help you launch your own group however you choose to do it, as long as it's in line with a metabolic strategy, right? So as long as it is part of what we're trying to achieve here and it's a metabolic strategy, we will help you launch the group. And over time, the more groups that we are aware of, we can start to put into that database, or the more projects that are coming up. Like, let's say someone wants to sign a petition for something, we can throw it into that database, right? If there's a researcher looking for participants, we can throw it in that database. So, that will be really exciting, because that's going to be hopefully one way we can kind of centralize a lot of the information about what other people are doing out there. And the other piece here is we are putting a lot of focus into, again, helping people launch their own groups. And that's kind of coming from almost like an AA philosophy, right? When we look at Alcoholics Anonymous, right, the philosophy behind it, yes, they had their steps and their structure, but that kind of started by people with lived experience pairing up with other people who had lived experience and developing their own program, right? And I think I was recently listening to a podcast about the history of AA, and I think now they like estimate that there could be up to 2.2 million participants in AA
Wow. Hmm.
worldwide, right? So that's kind of like, why reinvent the wheel? Like, let's kind of copy what someone else has been doing, because AA
Yeah.
works for a lot of people, and AA only works if you're in a community.
Mm. Well, I think that's wonderful. And again, looking at it from, somebody on the ground who wants to make recommendations and send somebody somewhere, that sounds like a great resource that somebody could be sent to. And then that person could then see what's out there, decide
Yeah.
whether they want to participate, whether they want to start their own thing, who's already done this. Like there's so many different opportunities from that I think will be so beneficial long term. So I absolutely love that. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about the direct team that you work with. And again, it's cool that I get to talk with Robin and see how things are going and evolving. She had the idea, and I think it's wonderful. And I really want to do this, to get all three of you together so that we could do, a podcast episode where all three of you are talking about your work and projects and all this stuff. But
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be really powerful and really helpful for people, if we can coordinate schedules to be able to do that. But they're not on this episode. You can say whatever you like about them. How has it been working directly with Emily and Robin in this process? Like three different people have recovered, three different ways, maybe have three different ways of thinking about things. What has it been like working with this team?
You know what? Working with this team has, like, it's been great. And this is the first time too that I've been in a solely remote position. So just the adjustment of working remote and trying to figure out, okay, how are we really trying to grow this organization into something big and meaningful, and something that's just like could have a lot of potential in my mind to really take off. And how are we doing that with a bunch of people who are working remotely from all over, the country? Like I'm Canadian, they're both, Emily's LA, Robin's Texas, right? So there's one piece where that's just kind of exciting is it just makes the world seem a little bit smaller when you can connect with all of these people. Our core advocate group, we have individuals who are in Australia, we have someone from South Africa. So there's a little bit of sort of I'm looking for a little bit of challenges with trying to navigate time zones. But in terms of just like working with the group, even if it's Robin and Emily, if we're including, the core advocates, we're including people from the board, everybody's got so much momentum and excitement. It's been excellent. It's been absolutely excellent. Like I don't have a single negative thing to say about it. Like this is, and again, I took a chance because I completely changed my career. Like no looking back, I do not have any regrets for doing this because
Wow,
I think
that's
it's going to be
amazing.
amazing. I really do.
That's incredible. Well, yeah, that's incredible. I'm a little disappointed that you don't have anything negative to say about Robin in particular, but it's wonderful and
Yeah.
it mirrors what I have observed with what she's gone through and assimilating into this team and leaving behind some of the coaching that she was doing, being a little apprehensive about this, and then saying like I've seen some of these things, kind of fail in the past, and I don't want to push back on different ideas. I'm a little bit nervous about speaking out, but she's told me like every time she's brought something up or anybody in the team brings something up, like everybody just works together and you guys problem solve and accomplish so much, even if people have different opinions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really great in that regard because even working as much as I do with Emily and Robin, like sometimes they'll have ideas that I was like, I would have never thought of that at all. And it's a good idea. Right. So it's nice just to have, you know, people who are all very motivated, but all have different ideas on something. And there's no like ego clashes or anything. It's just like it's all about what's going to help the organization or what's going to help the project.
Amazing. Yeah, that's definitely what I've observed with the team. That's incredible. And you think like, okay, we're doing this project. We know what the stakes are. The stakes are huge. There are so many people suffering with mental health out there. They don't they don't know to even look for Waldo. Like you said earlier in this conversation, like they don't know that this is an option. We're not trying to shove this down people's throat. We're just trying to say this could be an option. This has helped all these other people. You can try it.
Yeah.
Stakes are huge. And like what Metabolic Collective can do, the vision is potentially unlimited. It's amazing the
Oh
scale that you
yeah.
can do. And you have to understand that like we have to do this right from the beginning to make sure that this is done. And so being at this level, getting in when you have to be a part of something that could be absolutely so transformative for so many people out there. I mean, if you're listening and not watching, you just missed the hugest smile on Natasha's face
Oh,
talking to her. Like it's got to feel incredible the work you're doing.
oh, it's amazing. And it's fun and it's exciting just kind of being on the ground floor right before it takes off. Because I think it's going to take off. I think the potential is huge. And ultimately like there's going to be a lot of people who will benefit from the work that we're doing. And then those people, I always think of a ripple effect, right? If we can help people launch groups, if we can help people be able to tell their story publicly or to deliver a presentation, all of those little drops all over the world are going to cause a ripple effect, right? Like that would be inevitable. So I'm very, very excited to see where all of this goes.
Amazing. It's so exciting. And I'm so grateful for you that you'd be willing to even consider leaving behind a career, a practice, all this stuff to work on this project. Your story in just such a short amount of time with metabolic therapies is absolutely incredible. And I'm just so grateful for you and the work that you're doing out there and so excited to see how this is going to transform lives out there. Thank you so very much for everything you've done, Natasha. I just absolutely love chatting with you. I'm looking forward, hopefully, to hanging out in person with you at the COSI 2026 convention, which is always really awesome. And yeah, it'll be awesome to get to hang out with you. But for now, Natasha, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
You know what? So I would recommend that people go to our website with Metabolic Collective, which is just metaboliccollective.org. And we just we just updated the website. So there are already a couple of resources on there. You're going to see a couple of groups that are currently running that we've organized. So one group is the Watering Hole. So the Watering Hole event, we try to host it monthly, and it is about an hour and a half in length. The first hour, we have a guest speaker. So we have a speaker who will then incorporate some kind of an exercise. And again, it all revolves around metabolic therapies. So I know this will probably air after our next speaker, but our next speaker, as an example, is going to be talking about motivational interviewing. And then the speaker that we have in February is going to be talking about doing like a cooking class live. So we're going to have various speakers. And then the last part of those meetings is typically just, an opportunity for the community members to gather so we can talk about things like what are call to actions, what can we do in our communities. The next meeting, we're actually going to soft launch what we're calling a pitch day. So pitch day is if you have an idea of a group you want to launch or a project, you can pitch it to the community so you can get some feedback or maybe potentially get other people who want to join in on your project or group. So we're going to soft launch that. And the hope there is over time, Watering Hole and Pitch Day will just be two separate events once we get more people. And then we also help with the Mamas group. So the Mamas group is almost like the Al-Anon for the family members and friends of who have an individual who is struggling with mental health or a neurological issue. So that is actually run by Janet Ebos for the most part. So you will find links to those on a calendar in the website. And then we also just uploaded that slide deck that I was talking about. So there is a slide deck about how you can talk about metabolic psychiatry to a local community with a video tutorial on how to do that. So those are already up there. They're good to go. So anyone who looks at our website who wants to start doing some kind of advocate work right away, that is a great way. On our main page, at the bottom of the main page, there is like a form that you can fill out. So that can be to get the newsletter, or if you want to become involved in some way, if you fill out that form, we would have a volunteer coordinator who will reach out to you and we'll kind of triage, like, how can we help you? What kind of resources can we connect you with? And we're starting to create a database that way too. So over time, we can see like who's in our database that's a clinician, who's in our database that, is looking for a group, who in our database is looking for peer support. So then that way we can start connecting people as new members come in. So there's a lot of moving parts, but it's going really, really well so far.
It's amazing. It's crazy to me how many resources you already have, and just to consider how much that's going to grow. And again, those ripple effects, and not only like your direct work, but the indirect work that's going to go out there is absolutely staggering. And I am very optimistic, like you said, that this might be the front edge of a real paradigm change in this world, and we can help a lot of people. So you're such a big part of that. And I'm so grateful for you and all the work that you're doing. And grateful that you'd be willing to kind of change your career and focus on this stuff is wonderful. And you're going to change a lot of lives. And so, Natasha, just so grateful for you and so grateful for all of your work and for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Casey. And thank you again for the opportunity for just letting me talk about it. Because again, this is how we get people to know and become aware that these interventions exist.
Yep, exactly. It's so important. It was such an honor to host you today. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.